Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Morning light pours into the kitchen through a gap in the curtains as Warren prepares breakfast. He's gotten into the habit of doing this, getting up at 5:30 every morning and having breakfast for two ready by 6 a.m. As a private investment advisor, he has been serving clients for 12 years and has built quite a reputation. He wasn't one of those people who adhered to a strict 9 to 5 work schedule, but he did value the quiet time in the morning. His wife Claire is always up late. They had been married for 8 years and had developed a harmonious balance with each other's rhythms. Warren likes to get up early, while Claire prefers the evening hours. It didn't affect their marriage. At least that's what Warren always thought. Until today. "Good morning," Claire said as she walked into the kitchen, her blonde hair tied casually into a ponytail. She gave Warren a quick kiss on the cheek before taking her usual seat. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," Warren said with a smile, placing the omelette and toast in front of her. "Any plans for today?" Claire sipped her coffee slowly and methodically, her eyes resting on the screen of her cell phone as if she were reading something important. Then she looked up and said in an unusually calm tone, "I have a flight in 3 hours. Martin invited me on a month-long trip to celebrate his birthday." Warren's hand stopped in midair, his grip on the coffee pot trembling slightly. Martin is Claire's ex-husband, and they divorced 2 years before Claire met Warren. "A month." Warren tried to keep his voice steady. "You never mentioned it." Claire shrugged, wearing an expression on her face that Warren couldn't decipher. "It's a whim. Martin called last night, and I thought it was a good offer." Warren slowly put down the coffee pot. "What about your job?" Claire is a freelance writer specializing in articles for several travel magazines. "I'll be working on the road," she replied, getting up at the same time. "I've already packed my bags. Uber will be here in 10 minutes. With that, she left the table, leaving Warren sitting alone, coffee cold in his hand. He heard her dragging her suitcase down the stairs, then the sound of the front door closing. There were no goodbyes, no explanations, no signs that she was coming back. Warren sat there feeling as if he had been hit by a truck. Their marriage has been peaceful, one might even say happy. Of course, like all couples, they had their share of arguments, but never a serious crisis. At least that's what he thought. Until now, he hadn't realized that he might have been blind to a lot of things. Warren is sitting in his office, unable to concentrate on his work. 6 hours had passed since Claire had left, and his brain was still trying to process everything that had happened. He dialed Claire's number, but all he could hear was a voicemail tone. He sent a few text messages, but all of them showed delivered unread. "Hey Warren, how are you?" His assistant Fiona stood in the doorway and asked, "You don't look right." Warren forced himself to smile. "I'm fine, just a little headache." Fiona nodded, and though her eyes showed she wasn't entirely convinced, she had the good sense not to ask more questions. "Don't forget the meeting with Norman at 2 o'clock. Warren nods his thanks before looking down at his phone again. Still no reply from Claire. He opened the social media app and checked Claire's account, but she hadn't updated since yesterday. Then an idea hit him. He opened a search engine and typed in Martin's full name. A few seconds later, a series of results appeared on the screen. Martin is now a successful architect with a fairly good reputation in Europe. Warren clicks through to his social media pages and is greeted by a photo uploaded this morning. Martin standing in front of a private jet with the caption, "Ready to get this surprise tour started. Hashtag birthday celebration, hashtag round the world." There is no Claire in the photo, but the timestamp in the photo matches the time Claire left. Warren felt a wave of nausea. He closed the page and stood up and walked towards the window, taking deep breaths to try and calm down. He needs more information. He needed to determine exactly what Claire was doing. But more importantly, he needed to figure out what he was going to do next. This was more than a sudden trip, it was a betrayal, a cold abandonment. To make matters worse, Claire doesn't even bother to give a reasonable explanation or a formal goodbye. She just disappeared, as if the 8 years of their life together hadn't even been worth mentioning. Warren clenched his fists and felt anger begin to replace shock. If Claire thought she could ditch him this easily, and then come back a month later as if nothing had happened, she was sorely mistaken. He wouldn't be treated as an available option, a backup in the absence of her ex-husband. He turned on his computer and began searching for divorce lawyers. That night, Warren returns to his empty home. The silence in the house was suffocating. He took off his jacket, walked into the kitchen, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. The alcohol burned his throat, but it didn't ease the pain inside him. He walked into the bedroom, Claire's scent still lingering in the air. He opened her closet and saw that some clothes were missing from it. The suitcase is also missing, but most of her belongings are still in place, suggesting that she did plan to return. Warren sits on the edge of his bed, contemplating his options. He could wait for her to come back and pretend everything was okay, or he could look for answers. He chose the latter. He opens Claire's laptop. The password was their wedding anniversary, and that never changed. The screen lit up, displaying the last page. She'd viewed an airline confirmation page with Rome as the destination. Next, he checked her email. Most were work-related, but in the deleted folder he found several emails from Martin dating back 3 months. The first email seemed ordinary, just pleasantries between two old friends. But as time went on, the tone of the emails became more intimate. A recent email reads, "Miss our time together. Glad you decided to join the trip. We have so much lost time to make up for." Warren felt a cramp in his stomach. He continued his search, checking the backup of her text messages. Claire always syncs text messages from her phone to her computer, a habit she's had for years. In a hidden folder, he finds a conversation with Martin. The message logs clearly show that they haven't just been keeping in touch. They've been seeing each other in secret for at least 6 months. The latest one reads, "He knows nothing. I told him it was a birthday trip and he didn't ask any questions. See you in a month." Warren shut down his computer and felt a wave of vertigo. His wife wasn't just going on a trip, she was reconnecting with her ex-husband. And most agonizing of all was her deception. She hadn't even given him a decent explanation or goodbye. It's at this moment that Warren decides he's not going to be a passive victim. He's not going to wait for Claire to come back and pretend everything's fine. No, he'll plan his own counterattack. But first, he needed hard evidence and a flawless plan. Warren didn't go to the office the next morning. Instead, he called Fiona and told her that he needed to take care of some personal emergencies and might not be able to come to work for a few days. Then he began a systematic investigation. First, he contacted their bank and checked all the transaction records for the last 6 months. The results were shocking. Claire used their joint credit card to pay for multiple upscale restaurants and boutique hotels on days when Warren was traveling or working late. These are not work-related expenses, as Claire's work reimbursements are always processed through her business credit card. Next, Warren checked their phone bill. Claire's phone records show frequent and lengthy calls between her and Martin, usually occurring when Warren was not home. The earliest call dates back 8 months. All of this points to the disturbing conclusion that Claire's relationship with Martin was not a whim, but a carefully planned betrayal that lasted for months. Warren's anger gradually shifted into a calm resolve. He won't be overwhelmed by anger. Instead, he'll plan his revenge with the same coldness and precision. He dialed a number for Lucas, a private investigator he'd met years ago on an investment consulting job. "Warren, it's been a long time." Lucas' voice came from the other end of the line. "What can I do for you?" "I need to track someone down," Warren said succinctly. "My wife and her ex-husband. They should be in Rome by now." Lucas was silent for a moment, as if assessing the nature of the request. "Sounds like a personal question. Are you sure you want to go this way?" "I'm pretty sure," Warren replied calmly. "I need proof. Not only for myself, but also for the upcoming divorce proceedings." "Understood," Lucas said. "Give me their details and I'll start investigating immediately. But keep in mind that services like this don't come cheap." "Money is not the issue," Warren says. "What I need is thoroughness and discretion." After arranging to work with Lucas, Warren began the second phase of his plan, preparing the divorce papers. He contacted Aiden, an experienced divorce attorney, to set up a meeting that afternoon. "Based on what you've said, this should be a relatively straightforward case," Aiden said after hearing Warren's detailed account, "especially given the infidelity clause in your prenuptial agreement." Warren nodded. Both he and Claire insisted on signing detailed prenuptial agreements prior to their marriage, which specified the legal consequences of betraying the marital relationship. At the time, it seemed like a mere formality, an insurance measure, but now it would become a central tool in Warren's revenge program. "Once we have hard evidence, we can start legal proceedings," Aiden continued. "But are you sure that's what you want? Sometimes problems between couples can be solved through counseling and communication." Warren sneered. "We're past the point of communication. Her choice was clear. Now it's my turn to make mine." After leaving the attorney's office, Warren drove to the bank. He opened a new personal account and transferred most of the funds from the joint account, leaving only enough to cover basic living expenses. He also froze their joint credit cards to make sure Claire couldn't use them while she was out of the country. Back home, Warren begins to organize all the financial and legal documents. He gathered all the important documents such as real estate deeds, insurance policies, investment portfolios, etc., to make sure Claire could not make any changes without informing him. He also contacted a locksmith to arrange for all the door locks to be replaced next week. If Claire thinks she can come back in a month's time as if nothing has happened, she's in for a harsh reality. Finally, Warren sets up a surveillance system, including a hidden camera at the door, so he knows when Claire comes home and how she reacts. Later that night, Warren lay in bed and for the first time felt a twinge of control. The hurt was still there, the sting of betrayal still sharp, but now he had a plan, a goal. He's not going to make it easy for Claire to walk in and out of his life. She will pay for her decision. A week later, Lucas brought in the first batch of photos and reports. They met at Warren's temporary apartment, a place far from the area he and Claire shared. They were indeed in Rome, Lucas said, placing a stack of photos on the table, and looked quite intimate. Warren went through the photos one by one. They clearly show Claire and Martin walking hand in hand through the streets of Rome, kissing at the Trevi Fountain, and having dinner at a restaurant near the Piazza di Roma. Each photo was like a knife stabbing into Warren's heart, but he forced himself to keep looking. According to my research, they stayed at a 5-star hotel in the center of Rome, charging more than €800 per night for a suite, Lucas continued. They usually went out sightseeing all day, dined together in the evening, and then returned to the same room. There is no evidence whatsoever that they lived apart. Warren nods, trying to keep his expression calm. Where do they plan to go? According to their travel agent booking, Florence, Venice, and then a few Greek islands are next. The last stop was Istanbul, Turkey, and then back to the United States. The whole trip is expected to last a month, as Claire says. Warren scrutinized the travel plans. Keep tracking them. I need as much evidence as possible, especially any evidence that suggests the duration of the relationship. Lucas nodded his head in understanding. I have contacts in Rome who keep track and document everything. I'll send you weekly updates and photos. Warren thanked Lucas and returned to his temporary home. He began to plan his next move. First, he contacted Aiden and forwarded him the evidence Lucas had gathered so that he could begin preparing the formal divorce papers. He then contacted a moving company and arranged for all of Claire's personal belongings to be packed and stored in the garage the following week. He wouldn't throw her things away or damage them, that would be petty, but he wouldn't let them continue to occupy the home they shared, either. Next, Warren began posting carefully constructed updates on social media. Instead of directly mentioning Claire's betrayal, he posted photos and statuses that suggested he was alone, with subtle references to trust and new beginnings. The posts immediately drew the attention of their mutual friends, many of whom privately inquired about what had happened. Warren responds carefully, neither fully exposing Claire's behavior nor defending her. Instead, he acted like a wounded but still dignified husband, an image that quickly won the sympathy and support of his friends. At the same time, Warren has not forgotten his job responsibilities. He stays in touch with Fiona on a daily basis to make sure his clients get the attention they deserve. But he told her he needed to work remotely from home for a while due to a family crisis. Fiona, being an experienced assistant, immediately understood the hint and promised to take care of everything in the office. Over the next 2 weeks, Warren's life settled into a strange rhythm. During the day, he focuses on his work, video conferencing with clients, analyzing investment opportunities, and providing financial advice. At night, he focuses on his revenge plan, reviewing the latest photos and reports Lucas has sent, discussing strategy with his lawyers, and preparing for the scenario he'll face when Claire returns. Each day, his anger didn't diminish, but it became calmer and more focused. It was no longer a burning emotion, but a cold determination, a desire for justice. Lucas' report continues to show Claire and Martin's journey in full swing. They have now arrived in Greece and are staying in a private villa, enjoying the sun, the beach, and each other's company. The photos show them looking very happy and totally immersed in their rekindled love. These photos should have made Warren feel even more angry and hurt, but instead, they strengthened his resolve. Claire chose her path, and now she must face the consequences of that choice. As the journey enters its third week, Warren's plans are fully in place. The divorce papers are ready, just waiting for Claire's signature. The locks on the house have been changed, and the security system has been updated. All of Claire's personal belongings were packed and stored in the garage, just as Warren had planned. Bank accounts and credit cards have also been completely segregated to ensure that Claire does not have access to Warren's funds. Their joint assets have been initially divided in accordance with the terms of the prenuptial agreement, which means Warren retains the majority of the property as Claire has breached the fidelity clause. Warren even contacted Claire's main client, in the name of a concerned husband, to ask if she had submitted due work. Of course, she didn't, because she was too busy on her romantic trip with Martin. This seemingly innocuous inquiry is actually the first step in shaking up Claire's professional relationship. With everything in place, Warren just has to wait for Claire's return. According to Lucas' latest report, this will happen in a week. Claire and Martin are now in Istanbul, Turkey, the last stop on their journey. Warren decided to give Claire a special welcome gift, a yellow envelope containing all the evidence, divorce papers, and a letter detailing his feelings and his decision. The letter will be nailed to the front door to make sure Claire sees it as soon as she returns. He spent the entire day composing the letter, making sure that every word conveyed his feelings and determination. The last part of the letter is particularly important as it clearly expresses Warren's expectations for Claire's future: absolute separation with no possibility of reconciliation. When Warren finishes the letter, he finally feels a sense of relief. The revenge plan is complete. Now he just needs to wait for Claire to return and witness her reaction when she faces the consequences of her actions. He couldn't help but wonder how Claire would react when she realized her life had fallen apart. Will she regret it? Will you plead for forgiveness? Or will she stick to her choice and start a new life with Martin? Either way, Warren is ready. He will no longer be the deceived and betrayed husband, but a man in control of his own destiny. The sweetness of revenge is close at hand. The day Claire returned, Warren watched the whole thing on a hidden camera mounted in the doorway. He chose not to be physically present because he knew that confronting Claire directly might weaken his resolve. Instead, he was in his new apartment, watching real-time surveillance via cell phone app. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a cab pulled up in front of the house. Claire gets out of the car, looking radiant, her tan skin and easy smile suggesting she's had a good time. She shuffled her suitcase toward the front door, completely oblivious to the striking yellow envelope until she stood in the doorway ready to open it with her key. Warren watched her expression change from confusion to shock as she opened the envelope and perused its contents. Photos, email printouts, text message logs, hotel receipts. All the evidence was there, irrefutable proof of her betrayal. There are also divorce papers that need her signature. But it was Warren's letter that apparently shocked her the most, and she read it twice, her face becoming paler and paler. Claire then tries to open the door with a key, but of course, the lock has been replaced. She started knocking on the door, calling Warren's name with panic in her voice. She then took out her cell phone and dialed Warren's number, but the call went straight to voicemail because Warren had changed his number. "Warren, please pick up the phone," she pleaded in her message. "We need to talk. It's not cheating. I'm not lying to you. How could you throw me out on the street with no points and no money?" Warren sneered and shook his head. She's still trying to deny it, even in the face of such overwhelming evidence. It just confirms that he made the right decision. Claire continued to bang on the door, trying to call Warren's number and even calling a couple of her friends' numbers. But it was clear that no one was willing to help her. Warren had made sure their mutual friends knew the truth, or at least his carefully edited version of it. Eventually, after nearly an hour of trying, Claire seemed to accept reality. She picked up her suitcase and shuffled heavily toward the curb, dialing the cab again. Warren felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It's not joy, it's not pleasure, it's a feeling that justice has been done. Claire is now experiencing the same shock and betrayal he experienced a month ago, but unlike him, she deserves to suffer through it. He grabbed a bowl of popcorn and continued to watch the drama. It was more satisfying than he could have imagined. And that's just the beginning. Over the next few days, Warren closely monitored Claire's movements through Lucas and other channels. She checked into a cheap motel, apparently looking for more permanent housing. Her attempts to contact Warren and their mutual friends were unsuccessful. She even went to Warren's office, but Fiona had been instructed not to let her in. Claire contacted an attorney, but according to Lucas' report, the meeting did not go well. The attorney apparently told her that the prenuptial agreement was very clear and that it would be very difficult for her to fight for anything beyond what was stipulated in the agreement, given the evidence available. Meanwhile, Warren embarks on the second phase of his revenge plan to sabotage Claire's professional and social relationships. First, he contacted the editors of the travel magazines for which Claire regularly writes. As a concerned husband, he asks Claire if she has submitted the article she promised because she is traveling for work. Of course, the editors all said they hadn't received anything, which made them begin to question Claire's professionalism. Then, Warren inadvertently mentions that Claire is actually traveling with her ex-husband, not working. He offered into evidence photographs showing Claire enjoying vacations at sites around the world rather than performing any kind of work. The results are immediate. Within a few days, Claire received emails from multiple clients informing her that they no longer needed her services. Her professional reputation has suffered a serious blow, which means she will face serious financial difficulties. Next, Warren began sharing carefully edited updates on social media. Instead of attacking Claire directly, he acts like a wounded but dignified husband, seeking support and understanding from his friends. This was very effective, and Claire soon found herself isolated in her social circle. On the third week, Claire finally contacted Warren's attorney and offered to sign the divorce papers. She had no choice. The prenup was very clear, the evidence was irrefutable, and continued resistance would only lead to more legal fees and social humiliation. The divorce proceedings went well. Under the terms of the agreement, Warren retained the house and most of the joint assets. Claire gets her personal belongings and a small amount of money, enough to start over, but nowhere near the comfortable life she had through her marriage. But that's not the end of Warren's program. After the divorce was finalized, he initiated one last surprise. His attorney sent Claire a legal notice demanding that she reimburse all charges, plus interest and legal fees, for the use of the co-branded credit card during her trip with Martin. This request is perfectly legitimate because, according to their financial agreement, the joint credit card should be used only for family and joint expenses, not for personal luxury travel. This final blow pushed Claire to the brink of an economic crisis. She has already lost most of her clients and is now facing huge debts. She was forced to sell most of her personal possessions to pay for these expenses, including her cherished jewelry and artwork. Meanwhile, Warren begins a new life. He purchased a new apartment away from the area where they once lived together. He is fully committed to his work, which has allowed his investment advisory business to flourish. He even begins a more personal relationship with Fiona, though he remains wary of love and trust. 6 months later, Warren received Lucas' last report. She left town today. Lucas's text message reads, and as far as I know accepted a low-paying job in a remote area. It looks like she's completely given up on everything here. Warren stood on the balcony of his new apartment, taking in the night view of the city while pondering Lucas's message. The cycle of revenge is finally complete. Claire has lost everything she was so proud of: her career, her reputation, her social circle, her comfortable living situation. She has to start from scratch now, just like Warren had to do when he found out about her betrayal. But unlike Warren, Claire doesn't have his resources and connections to back her up. She was alone with all the consequences. Warren smiles and raises his glass in a toast to his victory. His plan is executed flawlessly every step of the way, from gathering evidence to severing financial ties, from changing the locks on the doors to destroying Claire's professional and social connections. Every detail has been carefully planned to ensure that Claire can fully experience the feelings of betrayal and abandonment. What pleased Warren most was Claire's complete isolation. Martin has apparently broken off his relationship with her and returned to Europe to continue his architectural career. Their so-called rekindled love quickly crumbles under the pressure of reality. Claire not only loses Warren, but also the man who caused her to betray her marriage. Warren's cell phone rang again, and it was a text from Fiona. "Did you have a nice dinner? See you tomorrow." Warren replied with a smiley emoticon. His relationship with Fiona is moving in a positive direction, although he remains cautious. The scars of betrayal don't go away easily, but he's learned to protect himself and is no longer naive enough to believe in superficial promises and vows. He went back to his bedroom, turned on his computer, and checked the latest investment reports. The apartment was quiet and tidy, furnished exactly to his liking. No trace of Claire, no shadow of the past. It's a new beginning, built on successful revenge. Warren doesn't regret his decisions or actions. Claire chose betrayal and deception, and she must face the consequences of those choices. He had taught her a profound lesson, one she would never forget. He only hopes that others will learn from Claire's mistakes. Betrayal always has a price, and sometimes that price is too high to bear. In bed, Warren flipped through the last batch of photos Lucas had sent, Claire dragging her simple luggage aboard a bus to a remote town. She looked haggard and tired, the sparkle in her eyes long gone. A far cry from the glowing, expectant woman who was traveling the world with her ex-husband a month ago. Warren turned off his cell phone and lay back on his bed, enjoying the peace that comes with perfect revenge. Tomorrow is a new day, full of possibilities and opportunities. As for Claire, she'll wake up in a strange town and face an entirely different reality, one shaped by her own choices. Claire stood by the bench at the station and watched the bus slowly pull away. It was late in the day, and the streets of the town were quiet and strange. She was dragging the only suitcase containing her only remaining personal belongings, clothes, some books, and a few pieces of jewelry that she hadn't yet sold when she was in desperate need of cash. When she stood on her doorstep 6 months ago and found the yellow envelope, she never imagined it would come to this. At the time, she had just returned from a world tour with Martin and was filled with mixed emotions and decisions. She had planned to go home and be honest with Warren, explaining her feelings and experiences. But Warren beat her to it, in a way she never expected. When she opened that envelope and saw what was inside, her world collapsed. Photos, emails, text message logs. Warren had all the evidence. What's even more shocking is that he has taken action. The locks have been changed, the accounts have been separated, and divorce proceedings have been initiated. But most heartbreaking of all was the letter, filled with icy anger and ruthless determination between the lines. Claire tries to contact Warren to explain the situation and beg for forgiveness, or at least a chance to talk. But all attempts were rejected. Warren cuts off contact with her completely and makes sure she can't reach him through other channels. Initially, Claire felt angry and unfair. Yes, she made mistakes, but Warren's reaction seemed too extreme. Isn't 8 years of marriage worth one face-to-face conversation? Could the bond between them have been so easily destroyed by a single mistake? But over time, she begins to understand the logic behind Warren's actions. He felt betrayed and abandoned, just as she had made him feel the day she left the breakfast table. It's not just about her reconnecting with Martin. It's about the way she chooses to do it, leaving abruptly, with little explanation, leaving Warren to face everything alone. Now, 6 months later, Claire stands at the station in a strange town, ready to begin a whole new chapter of her life. She accepted a job as an assistant editor for a local newspaper, which didn't pay well, but was enough to keep the basics going. It was the only job she could find, considering her damaged professional reputation. She found a small apartment online with cheap rent and a 20-minute walk from the office. It was a far cry from the luxury homes she and Warren had in the big city, but it was all she could afford right now. As Claire dragged her bags towards her new apartment, she thought back to everything that had happened in the last 6 months. Every step felt like the continuation of a nightmare. First was the collapse of her career. One by one, her clients began to cancel their contracts. They politely stated that her recent work had not met expectations or that they were redirecting the editorial. But Claire knows the truth. Warren has made sure they know what she's actually doing during her work trips. Then came the disintegration of the social circle. She tries to reach out to friends for support and understanding, but most either reject her outright or remain distant. Apparently, Warren's version of the story has gone viral, portraying her as a cold-hearted betrayer. Then there was the economic crisis. The terms of the divorce were very unfavorable to her, but given the prenuptial agreement and her infidelity, that's not surprising. But the real blow came when Warren's attorney later made an additional demand. reimbursement for all charges made on the joint credit card used during the trip, plus significant interest and legal fees. Claire had to sell most of her personal possessions to pay for these expenses, including her cherished jewelry and artwork. Her savings were nearly depleted, and her credit score was severely damaged. She even considered bankruptcy at one point, but ultimately decided to accept that reality and pay off her debts. Most heartbreaking of all was Martin's absence throughout the process. When she needed support the most, he had returned to Europe to re-engage with his work. They kept in touch occasionally via email, but his words lacked sincerity and commitment. Their so-called rekindled love is quickly extinguished under the pressure of reality and proves to be a short-lived fantasy. When Claire finally landed the job, she felt almost relieved. It's a new beginning, a chance to move away from the mistakes and pain of the past. Perhaps in this town, where no one knows her story, she can reinvent who she is and what she lives for. Claire arrives at the apartment building, climbs 3 flights of stairs. The elevator hasn't worked in years, and finds her new home. The key turns and the door opens to reveal a small, austere space. A living room/kitchen combo, a small bedroom, and a smaller bathroom. The walls need to be repainted and the floors are worn, but everything is clean. She set down her bags and sat on the windowsill, looking out the window at the unfamiliar streets and buildings. As night falls, the lights come on gradually, adding a touch of warmth to the town. Claire pondered her choices and decisions. Would things have been different if she hadn't responded to Martin's first email? If she had resisted the temptation to reconnect with him? And if she had chosen to talk directly to Warren about her marital dissatisfaction instead of seeking external stimuli? But such thinking is pointless. The past is irrevocable, and she must face the reality of the present. Warren succeeds in his plan of revenge, completely destroying the life she once knew. Now she must rebuild from the ashes, one step at a time. Claire stood up and began to unpack her bags. Tomorrow was the first day of her new job, and she needed to rest and prepare. No matter how painful the past may have been, the future is still in her own hands. But as she gets ready for bed, she can't help but think of Warren and wonder if he's found peace, if he's satisfied with his revenge. She hoped so, because it meant he could move on, like she had to do now. Claire lay in bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. It wasn't the life she had imagined, but it was the result of her own choices. When she closes her eyes, she accepts this fact and resolves to learn from her mistakes rather than be defined by them. Warren's plan for revenge begins the day he discovers Claire's betrayal when she announces, as if nothing else, that she's going on a month-long trip with her ex-husband. But the real plotting began that night, when he found more evidence that this wasn't just a whim, but a secret relationship that had lasted for months. The first stage is the collection of evidence. Warren contacts Lucas, a private investigator he trusts, and asks him to track Claire and Martin's movements abroad. This was not only to confirm his suspicions, but also to establish conclusive evidence in the upcoming legal proceedings. "I need to know everything," Warren told Lucas. "Where they live, what they do together, how close they are. Leaving any possible loopholes is unacceptable to me." Lucas understood and accepted the assignment. Through his extensive network of contacts in Europe, he was able to closely follow Claire and Martin's journey, taking photos, collecting hotel records, and even obtaining restaurant reservations. All of this evidence points to one undeniable fact. Claire wasn't just traveling with her ex-husband, she was having a passionate reunion with him. Meanwhile, Warren began legal preparations. He consulted with Aidan, an experienced divorce attorney, and reviewed his prenuptial agreement with Claire in detail. "This is a strong document," Aidan commented after a careful reading, "and the infidelity clause is very clear. Considering the available evidence, your position is quite favorable." Warren nodded in understanding. Prior to their marriage, both he and Claire insisted on signing a detailed prenuptial agreement, which specified the legal consequences of betraying the marital relationship. At the time, it seemed like a mere formality, an insurance measure, but now it would become a central tool in Warren's revenge program. "I want the divorce process to be as quick and decisive as possible," Warren told Aidan, "and I'm not interested in prolonged negotiations or mediation. I just want to end the relationship and make sure she pays for her choices." Aidan understands Warren's position and begins to prepare the necessary documents. Divorce papers were drawn up, the division of property was planned, and everything was done according to the terms of the prenuptial agreement, which meant that Warren would keep most of their joint assets, including their house. Next, Warren begins to cut off Claire's financial access. He contacted their bank and segregated all the joint accounts to make sure Claire couldn't access his funds. He froze their joint credit card, setting aside only enough to cover basic household expenses. It may seem harsh, Warren explained to the bank manager, but it's a necessary self-protection measure given the current situation. The bank manager, a customer of Warren's for many years, understood and handled the request quickly. Within days, all financial ties were severed, ensuring that Claire would face financial hardship upon her return. Warren then begins to physically cut Claire off from her home. He hired a locksmith to replace all the door locks. He also upgraded the security system to ensure Claire could not gain unauthorized access to their home. It's not just the front door, Warren instructed the locksmith. The back door, garage door, and even the windows need new security measures. I need to ensure complete security and privacy. Meanwhile, Warren arranged for a professional moving company to pack and store all of Claire's personal belongings in the garage. He didn't throw them away or damage them, that would be petty, but he wouldn't let them continue to occupy the home they shared, either. Clothes, jewelry, books, artwork, everything that belonged to Claire was carefully packed and stored for her return. The key to this stage is to ensure that Claire faces a completely unfamiliar environment on her return, one where she is no longer welcome or accepted. By changing the locks and removing her belongings, Warren creates a strong sense of exclusion, ensuring that Claire is able to fully experience the feeling of being excluded, just as she made him feel. But Warren knows that true revenge isn't just about physical and financial isolation. It's also about social and emotional isolation. This is the third stage of his revenge plan, to destroy Claire's social and professional relationships. He began posting carefully edited updates on social media. Instead of directly mentioning Claire's betrayal, the posts hinted at a change in their relationship in a subtle way. The photo shows Warren alone, quoting mottos about new beginnings and authenticity. The posts immediately drew the attention of their mutual friends, many of whom privately inquired about what had happened. Warren's response was both strategic and deceptive. Instead of publicly denigrating Claire, he acts like a wounded but still dignified husband. This approach wins the sympathy and support of her friends, while subtly portraying Claire as an untrustworthy party. "I'm just trying to find myself again," Warren told a concerned friend. "Sometimes the people we think we know best will surprise us the most." This subtle but effective social management ensures that upon Claire's return, she will be faced with an unfriendly and even hostile social environment. Friends will side with Warren, and Claire will be excluded from the once close social circle. At the same time, Warren begins attacking Claire's professional relationships. He contacted the editor of the travel magazine for which she often wrote and asked if she had submitted the expected work. Of course, since she was busy traveling with Martin, she didn't fulfill her professional commitments. "I'm just a little worried," Warren told the editors. "She told me it was a work trip, but I haven't heard from her in a long time." This seemingly innocuous inquiry is actually planting seeds of doubt, suggesting that Claire is not only unreliable in her personal relationships, but professionally as well. These suspicions turned into certainties when Warren overheard Claire mentioning that she was actually traveling with her ex-husband, not working. "I don't want to cause any problems," Warren said while sharing the photo as evidence. "I just think you guys deserve to know the truth because you're her important professional partners." This orchestrated career sabotage ensures that Claire will face a serious career crisis upon her return. Her clients will question her integrity and reliability and will likely terminate their relationship with her. Finally, Warren prepared a special welcome gift, a yellow envelope containing all the evidence, divorce papers, and a personal letter. The letter details Warren's feelings and his expectations for Claire's future, complete separation with no possibility of reconciliation. As you read this letter, Warren writes, "You will realize that you have lost access to this house. The locks have been replaced, and all your personal belongings have been packed away in the garage. Our joint account has been closed, and the divorce papers are ready. You chose to start over with the past, and now you must face the consequences of that decision." The envelope was nailed to the front door to make sure Claire could see it as soon as she arrived home. It's a clear message. Her betrayal has been discovered and her life has been changed forever. This whole revenge plan demonstrates Warren's careful thinking and calm execution. Instead of being overwhelmed by emotion, he systematically planned a comprehensive revenge program to ensure that Claire could fully experience the feelings of betrayal and abandonment. When everything is in place, Warren just has to wait for Claire's return to see his plan put into action. Claire's flight home arrived an hour earlier than expected. Feeling both excited and nervous, she contemplated how she would explain the past month to Warren and the complications of her reconnecting with Martin. At the airport, she hesitated, considering whether she should call Warren to inform her of her early arrival. But in the end, she decided to give herself some time to organize her thoughts. She needs to think carefully about how to express her feelings, how to explain her behavior, and how their marriage should continue. Claire's heart raced as the cab pulled up to their home. She wasn't sure how Warren would react. Will he be angry? Do you feel hurt? Will an explanation be demanded? Or worse, would he act cold and distant? But what she didn't anticipate was that he wasn't even home. The cab pulls up in front of the house, and Claire gets out, dragging her bags towards the front door. Just then she noticed the yellow envelope nailed to the door. At first, she was confused. Then, when she removed the envelope and saw her name written on it in Warren's familiar handwriting, a sense of foreboding began to creep in. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the envelope and began to read the contents. The photo was the first strike. They show her and Martin in intimate moments in Rome, Florence, and Venice, walking hand in hand through the streets of Rome, kissing at the Trevi Fountain, and having dinner at a restaurant near the Piazzale Roma. The angle and clarity of the photos suggest they were taken by a professional, most likely a private investigator. Next came a printout of email and text message conversations documenting her communications with Martin over several months. Claire felt a wave of nausea at the sight of these private exchanges being exposed to the sun. Her secret life, the things she thought only she and Martin knew, are now all revealed to Warren. Then came the divorce papers, simple and cold, just waiting for her signature. The document references their prenuptial agreement, with special emphasis on the infidelity clause, which means Warren will keep most of their joint assets, including their house. But what broke Claire's heart the most was Warren's letter. The words are filled with pain, anger, and feelings of betrayal. He describes in detail how he discovered her deception, how he tracked her down, and how it all destroyed his trust and love for her. As you read this letter, Warren writes in it, "You will realize that you have lost access to this house. The locks have been replaced, and all your personal belongings have been packed away in the garage. Our joint account has been closed, and the divorce papers are ready. You chose to start over with the past, and now you must face the consequences of that decision." Claire's tears blurred her vision. She tried to open the door with a key, but as Warren said in his letter, the locks had been changed. She knocks on the door and calls out Warren's name, but there's no response. She pulled out her cell phone and dialed Warren's number, but the call went straight to voicemail. "Warren, please pick up the phone," she pleaded in her message. "We need to talk. It's not cheating. I'm not lying to you. How could you throw me out on the street with no points and no money?" But she knew those words were hypocritical. She did cheat. She did lie to Warren. She just didn't expect the consequences to come so quickly, so completely. Claire dropped onto the porch and felt a wave of dizziness. Her whole world collapsed in a flash. She has no home, no husband, not even the right to enter the house she has lived in for 8 years. Her personal belongings were packed away in the garage, waiting for her to come and collect them like an unwelcome visitor. Once the initial shock and panic had subsided a little, Claire began to think about her options. She needed a place to stay, she needed to contact a lawyer, and she needed to figure out what to do next. But first, she needed to retrieve her belongings from the garage. Claire walks towards the garage and finds the door open. Inside were neatly stacked cardboard boxes labeled with her name. Clothes, shoes, books, jewelry, artwork, all of her personal belongings were there, carefully packed and awaiting her arrival. This orderliness and meticulousness contrasted strangely with the coldness and determination Warren had just displayed. With an hour to spare, Claire managed to hail another cab loaded with her most important personal belongings. The rest will have to wait until she finds a more permanent home. But right now, she needed a place to spend the night. She contacted a few friends about staying with them temporarily, but most of them said they couldn't help her after hearing what she had done. Apparently, Warren has shared his version of the story with their social circles. Those who were willing to listen also said that they were not sure whether they should pick a side, given the circumstances, which was actually a polite refusal. Eventually, Claire found a cheap motel. The room was small and Spartan, but at least it gave her a place to think about her next step. She contacted Martin and told him what had happened. "I'm sorry to hear that," Martin said on the other end of the line. But there was a lack of sincerity in his tone. "But I'm back in Europe now and have a lot of work to take care of." Claire understood the implication. Martin didn't want to be caught up in this mess. Their trip was a brief reunion, not the promise of a new beginning. When confronted with the reality and consequences, he opts out, leaving Claire to face the storm alone. The next day, Claire contacted an attorney. She wants to fight for her legal rights in the house and its assets. But when the attorney reviewed the evidence and her prenuptial agreement with Warren, his assessment was not a happy one. "There's a clear infidelity clause in the agreement," the attorney explained, "and given the evidence available, it would be very difficult for you to fight for anything beyond what the agreement provides." Claire felt a pang of despair. Not only did she lose her marriage, but she may have lost her financial security and social status. To make matters worse, she realizes that she has also lost career opportunities. During her travels, she missed several important deadlines, and now her reliability is in question. It got worse when she checked her email. She received multiple emails from clients informing her that they no longer needed her services. Their reasons varied, but the core message was the same. She was seen as unreliable and unprofessional. Claire begins to realize the full extent of Warren's revenge plan. Not only did he cut her off from her home and financial resources, he destroyed her professional and social relationships. It was an all-out assault designed to ensure that she was isolated and restricted in every way. Over the next few weeks, Claire tried various ways to contact Warren. She sent emails, left voice messages, and even went to his office, but all attempts were rejected. Warren completely cut off all contact with her, making sure she couldn't explain or defend herself. Eventually, after another consultation with her lawyer, Claire decided to accept Warren's terms. She signed the divorce papers and accepted the limited division of assets provided for in the prenuptial agreement. Considering the overwhelming evidence and the clarity of the agreement, continued resistance will only lead to more legal costs and social humiliation. The divorce proceedings are going well, but that's just the beginning of Claire's nightmare. Shortly after the divorce became official, Warren's attorney sent her another legal notice demanding reimbursement of all charges, plus interest and legal fees, for the use of the joint credit card during her travels with Martin. This final blow pushed Claire to the brink of an economic crisis. She has already lost most of her clients and is now facing huge debts. She was forced to sell most of her personal possessions to pay for these expenses, including her cherished jewelry and artwork. In the meantime, she continued to look for work and shelter. Her savings were nearly depleted and her credit score was severely damaged, making it extremely difficult to find an affordable apartment. Many landlords rejected her application after conducting a background check because she now appears to be a financially risky tenant. Finally, for months after her divorce, Claire's job search efforts paid off. A small local newspaper offered her a position as an assistant editor, albeit at a much lower salary than she used to receive as a freelance writer. The job is located in a small town hours away from the big city, which means she has to move away completely and start a whole new life. For Claire, it was both a punishment and a relief. On the one hand, leaving meant abandoning the life and connections she had built over the years. On the other hand, it offered a chance to get away from painful memories and judgments. In a place where no one knows her story, she can start over and rebuild her life. As Claire packs her only remaining belongings and prepares to leave, she tries again to contact Warren in hopes of at least reaching some sort of reconciliation. Not to salvage their relationship, that's no longer possible, but to gain some measure of forgiveness or understanding. She sent Warren a brief email. "Warren, I'm leaving the city tomorrow to start a new life. I know you don't want to hear my explanation or apology, but I want you to know that I deeply regret my actions. I hurt you, betrayed your trust in an unforgivable way. I don't expect forgiveness or understanding, but I want you to know that I paid for my choices and learned a hard lesson from them. I wish you all the best, Claire." But like all previous attempts, the email went unanswered. Warren's silence reaffirms his position that there is no reconciliation, no forgiveness, only total separation. The day Claire left town, the weather was unusually sunny. She stood at the station, looking at the skyline of the city that had once been her home. There she and Warren built a life together, with laughter and tears, hopes and dreams. Now it's all in the past, destroyed by her betrayal and Warren's revenge. The bus arrives and Claire gets on and finds her seat. As the vehicle started and left the city, she felt a strange sense of relief. Despite the uncertainty and challenges of the future, at least she no longer lives in the shadow of the past. Claire thought of Warren one last time as the bus rolled toward the horizon. She wonders if he's really gotten satisfaction from his revenge scheme, if he's let go of his anger and pain, if he's moved on. She hoped so, because it meant that her betrayal hadn't completely destroyed him at least. A few hours later, the bus arrived in town. Claire stood by the bench at the station and watched the bus slowly pull away. It was late in the day, and the streets of the town were quiet and strange. She dragged her only suitcase towards her new apartment, ready to start her new life. Warren feels a deep sense of satisfaction when he receives Lucas' final report confirming that Claire has left the city and accepted a low-paying job in a remote area. His plan for revenge has been fully realized, and Claire is now experiencing everything he wanted her to experience: isolation, financial hardship, professional frustration, and social rejection. Over the past 6 months, Warren has made sure that every step of Claire's journey has been filled with obstacles and challenges. From freezing joint accounts to cutting off her social contacts, from destroying her professional reputation to holding her financially accountable during her travels. Each action was carefully designed to ensure that she felt the full consequences of her betrayal. What pleased Warren the most was Martin's reaction to the whole situation. As Warren predicted, when faced with a complex and confusing situation, Martin opted out. He returns to Europe to focus on his career, leaving Claire to face the storm alone. Not only does this prove Warren's accurate judgment of Martin's character, but it also provides Claire with another form of lesson. Those who tempt you into betrayal will rarely support you in difficult times. Warren's revenge also involves a particular kind of cruelty. He refuses to communicate with Claire at all. Despite her numerous attempts to contact him to explain her behavior or to seek some form of reconciliation, Warren has chosen to remain silent. This silence is more damaging than any words. It denies Claire the opportunity to argue or seek forgiveness, leaving her to struggle with her own guilt and regret. When Claire finally decides to leave town and take that low-paying job, Warren knows his revenge is complete. He doesn't need to keep spying on her or interfering in her life. She has paid her dues and learned her lesson. Now she will start a whole new life, far away from everything she once knew and was comfortable with. Only after confirming that Claire had left did Warren allow himself to fully relax. He doesn't feel guilty or sorry for his actions. As far as he was concerned, he had simply ensured that Claire experienced consequences commensurate with her behavior. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice, at least that's what he'd convinced himself. Warren settles into his new apartment and gets back into his work and social life. His relationship with Fiona is evolving, although he remains cautious about commitment. The scars of betrayal don't go away easily, but he's learned to protect himself and stop trusting so easily. Sometimes, especially in the dead of night, Warren thinks of Claire and the 8 years they spent together. Some memories are warm and wonderful, reminding him of the happiness he once had. But those moments will soon be replaced by memories of her betrayal, reassuring him that his revenge is just and necessary. What Warren doesn't know is that Claire sent him one last email before she left, expressing her remorse and her best wishes for the future. The email was automatically filtered to the spam folder, and Warren never saw it. Even if he sees it, it's unlikely to change his feelings or actions. The damage has been done, the trust has been broken, and some things can't be repaired with a simple apology or explanation. As Warren stood on the balcony of his new apartment, taking in the night view of the city, he felt a strange sense of calm. Revenge didn't feel as sweet or satisfying as he'd thought it would, but it provided an end, a completion. Claire has paid the price, he has carried out his justice. Now it was time to move on to whatever awaited him ahead. He looked at the lights in the distance and imagined that Claire was probably adjusting to her new life now, in that strange town. He didn't feel sorry or sympathetic for her, but he no longer felt anger or pain for himself either. Instead, he felt a sense of relief, a sense of a weight lifted off his shoulders. Revenge has been achieved and justice has been served. Warren has made sure that Claire will always remember the consequences of her betrayal. Now he can begin a new chapter of his own, no longer haunted by the shadows of the past. As for Claire, she will continue her new life in that remote town, reminded daily of her bad choices and the consequences they bring. That's what Warren wants, a lasting lesson, a warning that can't be forgotten. In a way, both of them were given the opportunity to start over, albeit under extremely different conditions and circumstances. Warren is armed with his resources, support system, and self-esteem. Claire has almost nothing and needs to rebuild her life from scratch. This contrast is not only the result of Warren's plan for revenge, but also its ultimate goal, to ensure that Claire fully understands and feels the full weight and consequences of her betrayal. For that matter, his plan was undoubtedly successful, and the results were painful and thorough. Warren closes the balcony door and returns to his new, well-appointed home. Tomorrow is another day with new possibilities and opportunities. As for Claire, she will continue on her chosen path, alone, without his support or forgiveness. This is the price of betrayal. This is Warren's justice. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.